Hey, new vlog. I know I've missed my window because we're nearing the end of summer, if not technically the end of summer, if you consider back to school the end of summer, which is me. But over the course of the summer, I noticed a trend in the kinds of library books that I was gearing toward. And then I realized I have enough of these to do a dedicated vlog specifically about this kind of book, which you've read the title so you know, but it is all summer camp books. Listen, I do nothing in life if not chase the feeling I get when I watch The Parent Trap, specifically the Lindsay Lohan version. I never grew up going to summer camp, but I had a best friend in high school who had. This is a long story for me just to say I'm chasing the feeling of being at a summer camp. Even though I haven't really been to one other than like the weird church camps I went to when I was like 8 and I was terrified and hated it and I still wet the bed, so that was really awkward. Too much info? I love to romanticize summer camp and thinking about like it's campfires and hiking and horseback riding and crafting, and it just seems so fun and wholesome. I don't think I've really read a book about summer camp, or if I have, it did not stick in my memory. So I just have a handful of books that I want to try out, and maybe this is my new favorite genre. As I mentioned, I raided my library. I'll mention this one first and foremost because I think I'm going to start with it, but it's That Summer Feeling by Bridget Morrissey. I read 30 pages of this and I'm convinced it's going to be one of my new favorite books of the year. This is an adult summer camp. Once the kids are back in school, the adults can like have their own summer thing, and the main character of this book is in a roommate cabin with another woman and they fall in love. I think the main character is like post-divorce, like trying to work out her life, and I started it and it is incredible. Like the writing style and the humor so far are totally up my alley, so I'm convinced this is going to be my favorite book of the year. So another book that I found is called Give Me a Sign by Anna Sortino. This is about a main character named Lila who is hard of hearing and goes to a summer camp for people who are hard of hearing. She's a camp counselor. She's in a gray area where she feels like she's not completely deaf, but she's also not fully hearing. So there's an internal battle there with her, and then she meets another guy at the camp. I think this is YA, but he offers to help teach her some more sign, and he's fully deaf. So it's about their love story. And someone has this on hold at the library, so this is one of the ones I'll have to read pretty soon. Another book I'm really excited for is one by Talia Hibbert. This one's called Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. It's Talia's YA book. This one technically is not like cute, fun, summery vibes, which it is, but it's not like a fun summer camp. It's like a survival kind of thing, like you would send your kid to as a punishment. So yeah, it's just these two teenagers that go on like this survival camping trip for 2 weeks, and they hate each other, so they have to rely on each other for survival. Talia is about to eat this up because Talia is such a good author, and I haven't really heard anyone talk about this one, so it has to go on the list, obviously. There's a book that I have as an ebook by Julie Murphy that I'm also interested in, which again, I think it falls into the category of not escape my life kind of fiction, but it's set at a summer camp nevertheless. It's called Camp Sylvania. That sounds like vampires. Oh, it is. This Summer Camp Bites. So this book is about a young main character. I think this book is middle grade. She thinks she's going to like a music camp like Camp Rock, and then she gets there and her parents sent her to fat camp, which is vile. The camp is run by like this famous celebrity like dieter, and the more that she spends time at the camp, the more she realizes there's some weird things going on. I think that's why the book seems very vampire coded, because I think there's some like fantasy elements there. But as much of a horror book that sounds, it also sounds kind of fun. I downloaded that one and I really want to read it. And lastly but not leastly, I have an unboxing. I got an email that was like, hi, I know it's bad for authors to read reviews, and I went, oh, but it was from Riley Redgate, who wrote Noteworthy and several other things, but I've read Noteworthy, which is a YA contemporary at, I think, a college or a boarding school that's about a cappella. I loved that book. And she was like, I have always enjoyed your review, but like, would you be interested in my new book? First of all, fangirling. Second of all, what is it? Guess what? I know we're all here for one thing, or I am at least. She has a new book coming out with her sister. By the way, I did not know that Riley was a pen name, so I keep calling her Riley. Her name is actually beautiful. It's Rihanna. All right, here we go. Ooh, this is so cute. It's like packaged as a care package. So the book that Riley, I have to stop calling her Riley. The book that Rhiannoch asked if I wanted to read is called Look No Further. So like I said, this is by Rhiannoch and her sister Shifra. I got a really good lesson in how Irish names are pronounced. Out of all the comparisons that I could have made to any of these books being like Parent Trap, which is the ideal that I have set and the standard, this one is the most similar to that, so I'm so excited for it, and I'd never heard of it until she reached out. Also, I'm just staring at the snacks that are in here and I keep wanting to take them out. I'll focus. Sorry, fat people behavior. Anyway, this is about a 17-year-old named Nico and a 15-year-old named Allie who meet at like an art school summer camp in New York City. They're both biracial characters, they're both half Chinese. They find out that they are siblings. Just based on the writing style of Noteworthy, I'm looking so forward to this. I don't buy books anymore, so getting new books, I'm like, woo! So yes, this is on the TBR. And while we're here, snacks. I'm so excited. I got goodies. First of all, obviously, summer camp. We got some sunscreen, which I will be needing because I'm going to the pool after this. So this is a Nico themed box, who is the character who's like more outgoing. This is my acceptance letter to the art school. Ooh, it's like a lemongrass barbecue sauce. Another spice kit with the disclaimer that it is mild. Thank you. Oh my God. Matcha latte oatmeal. Oh, these candies and like some sour gummy bears looking. The note on the box says, enjoy the gummies, hopefully they'll help get you inspired. And then there's a QR code for a summer playlist. I am so happy. Thank you, Rhiannoch and Shifra. That being said, that's the TBR. Hi y'all, I'm in the whorehouse, aka Shelby's house. Hi, best friend. We decided we were gonna have a reading day together, but then my mother called and she wants to go to TJ Maxx. So we're gonna go intervene. Sorry, do you mind if I brush my hair in your vlog? Background ASMR. I got a little bit of reading done. I've been reading a little bit throughout the week and haven't updated, so now I'm on page 124, which I think is significantly further than the last time I talked to you. Still tabbing the hell out of it. Shelby was entertained by how much this book is making me giggle. Every 30 seconds, I just had to be reading my book and I hear and then the feel of the tab. But it's so funny and cute and I like it a lot. I adore a book that could wrap shit up in 330 pages, and this book is literally 330 pages. I don't know why that page number to me is the perfect romance book page number, but authors take notes. This is still gearing up to be a 5-star book. It's just taking me so long to read, even though I think if I sat down and read it, I could probably finish it in one sitting, but we keep getting distracted because I'm with my bestie right now. Where'd she go? There's bestie. It's raining, which means I just had the best hour of reading ever. But I have to leave now because I'm having brunch with my family. However, I got to page, I already forgot, 250. So I have like 50 pages left. I like it a lot. I still think this book's main draw for me is just how relatable it is. I love the way that this main character thinks. All the themes of her like healing her inner child by being at this camp and wanting to replace negativity with positivity is just super sweet. I thought this book would be a 5-star book just based on like the first couple of chapters, and it's kind of leveled out for me because the camp takes place over like 5 days and the book's only like 300 pages. So it feels, I don't want to say insta-lovey, but the writing is definitely pretty surface level. It's just leaning more toward like 4.5 stars than a true 5. And I don't love the dialogue between them when they're talking about their feelings for each other. It got a little bit corny, but still, God, I love women. I'm gonna bring this with me and hopefully brunch takes a long time to get to our table so I can read. Oh my God, I love all the thunder and lightning. Before I go, I need to model the dress for you. Shelby got this and it didn't fit her, so she let me have it. And it's got a slit. Thank you. Well, I made myself at home at Shelby's house because I did make myself a strawberry lemonade. Well, I took a nap at my parents', then I fell asleep, but I made significant progress through this. I'm on page 264, which is the amount of days that Juliet was locked up at the beginning of Shadow Me. I think I have like 50 pages left, so I invited myself over to Shelby's. I think I've pinpointed why I think this book went from 5 to 4 stars for me. I know. I think the reason why this book is flopping a little bit is because the main character is so like over enthusiastically positive, which for the first half, I kind of related to, because it was that people pleasing, you know, I could make a situation better if I'm funny and I'm this and I'm that. But the second half of the book, where she's like realizing that she's queer and she's coming to terms with her divorce, it's kind of turned into like fake forced positivity sounding. So it's a little bit like a therapist has written a book for me, which for some people might be amazing. But I'm like, okay, it's a little bit cheesy. That's the hurdle I can't get over at this point, is she's very in her own inner monologue being like, and I can do whatever I put my mind to. I'm like, yes, girl, can we move on? Didn't really deliver on all the summer camp vibes I wanted, because this book, again, is super short, but there's only a couple of scenes actually about camp activities. The rest is just like conversations. And they're like at a party. I'm like, okay, but go horseback riding, go hiking, go in the lake. Like, there were very few scenes actually about camp activities, which is why we're here. So a couple of points docked for that. Just finished my book. It was fine. I was told this book only had one sex scene, and honestly, I read the entire book waiting and waiting for it, and I realized I'd already passed it. It was very chaste. I would probably only give that a 1 on the spiciness scale. Kind of typical, but still really feel good, really cute. I think I'm gonna stick with a 4-star rating. I enjoyed it, but I have a feeling that I might be taking these out and throwing them away rather than transferring them to my own copy, because I don't know that I loved it that much. I don't want to go home yet, so I do have a book on my library app that I can start before I get home. What's it called? It's the Julie Murphy one I talked about earlier. Due today, so I guess I'm checking it out again. Oh, there's a map. Okay, this one, I'm gonna get into this one because this sounds so good. I'm tapping out and it's 12:30 a.m. I'm at page 60 out of 200. Me reading a picture book, and I read a lot of it. So far, so good. I've highlighted a lot of things about like your parents always being like, "Ooh, little fatty, ooh, you're so gross," and it's like, isn't that just you thinking that about me and not me thinking that about me? Really easy to read, because obviously it's for like 12-year-olds. It's reminding me of books I read for the plus size readathon of like, I wish I'd read it when I was younger. So it's cute, but you can very much tell, like, if I was describing this book to a child, I might like be like, ooh, there's a mystery element, but reading it as an adult, it's like, yeah, it's vampires. I think it's supposed to be like the plot twist is like, ooh, and the camp is run by vampires, but you can tell. It's basically in the title, right? For me, I'll be back in 12 hours. For you, I'll be back in 2 minutes. Party! I'm zooming into the foot in that shot, just so you know. I always start out clips with me singing, then I always cut it out, but hey, I unfortunately did not record anything at Shelby's, which I just got home from, which it would have been cute because I was like floating in her pool and reading my book. What I didn't update you on is I actually paused, put a, what's that called, the corporate speak, put a tab in, put a cork in that, put a pin in that. I put a pin in my ebook I was reading. I'm like 40% of the way through on that one, and it's still really cute and nice, but this book is due back to the library tomorrow, so I'm getting as much done of it as I can. Then I'm gonna try and find an ebook somewhere, but this one is the Give Me a Sign by Anna Sortino. Own voices about a girl who's hard of hearing, and she goes and is a summer camp counselor. Really interesting perspective. I think I mentioned this when I was giving the synopsis, but she's not fully hearing, obviously, so she can't have normal, easy conversations with people because she has to kind of lip read and she loses the parts of the speech. But she also doesn't know fluent sign language, so when she goes to this summer camp where people are completely deaf and they rely on sign language, she also can't really have a conversation with them, which I think is interesting because the way the writing style is right now, I like the writing of it. This book is very educational, but it doesn't feel overly preachy, which I feel like some books can do. The thing I'm noticing is that because she misses a lot of what people say or what they sign, there's a lot of blanks and a lot of confusion and a lot of questioning. I think it's just really clever that I'm as confused as the main character is, which I know you have to be if the book is first person, but it really feels like all the conversations she has take so much effort and it's such a long time just to comprehend a simple thought that I think it's going to be a very interesting progression. Like once she starts learning more sign, like how much more fluidly and easy these conversations are going to come to her. So I'm really liking it for that. I don't like that there's a lot of small children, and also the romance is a little bit predictable. There's like the very sexy like British lifeguards there, and then there's like this other deaf boy that she meets. You can just tell it's like the deaf boy thinks that she wants to be with the lifeguard, so he's like backing off, but she's not interested in them, she's interested in him. It's cute, it's predictable, but it's sweet. But yeah, that was my Labor Day weekend. I know I have to turn in this book by tomorrow, so I'm like halfway through this physical book as well. I really want to finish this by tomorrow so I can turn it in, and I might have to take an L and get the ebook, or just turn it in a day late. No, I feel like that's bad karma. I can't do that. Okay, my camera is flashing low battery, so I'm gonna take my gallon of sweet tea I stole from Shelby's house inside. I have good news and bad news for the people of YouTube. The bad news is I spent 12 hours of my life last night with 0 power because I was foolish and I was like, oh my god, it's raining, I'm gonna have a great night, it's gonna be aesthetic when I read. Encore said, actually, you're not. We're gonna make all your fridge food go bad. So thank you, Texas, for that one. Somehow I'm gonna find a way to blame Greg Abbott. The good news, there was a second half of that. The good news is I finished a book. So the book that I focused on, I had to return the book I was reading about the girl who is a counselor at the summer camp for the hard of hearing. But I focused my time on Camp Sylvania. I'm thoroughly shocked because I have not heard a single peep about this book. I did not know it existed. Like, I feel like I followed Julie Murphy in plenty of places and nowhere had I seen. And it mentions stuff like TikTok, so I think it's pretty recent. But anyway, I thought it was cute. I think if I was younger, I would have really loved this. And even as an adult, I feel like sometimes children's books can be like really overdone or not enjoyable to read as an adult. Like low-key, I feel that way about Percy Jackson. I did not enjoy reading that as an adult. It just felt so cringe. Shelby is nodding. I feel very seen. But this one did feel nice to read as an adult. The other thing I thought was so nice is that reading this, I don't want to say healed my inner child, but there's definitely a part of it where the main character addresses like the way that her parents have these expectations of her to be skinny. Like obviously the reason they sent her to a fat camp, getting her emotional reaction to that, and especially because also the leaders of the camp are pretty fat phobic, and seeing how they're like, we're just kids trying to have fun and y'all are out here like policing us from saying the word fat. There were several quotes that I highlighted where it was just such a nice, obviously I know it's a grown woman writing it, but it was such a nice sentiment to hear from a young girl who looked like me at the time. So again, I read the book through a younger Whitney's eyes and I was like, I think I really would have liked that. So I think the whole vampire play was fun. This book was just the right length because I think if it would have gone on any longer, I would have been bored. I think I'm gonna give that like 4 stars. It was really sweet. And I would definitely recommend it to kids. So I think like obviously I'm not rating it for 26-year-old adults to read. If you have a kid in your life who's plus size or you want them to be more empathetic about that experience, I definitely think it's a good one to pick up. I'm not around kids, so I don't know how kids talk, but it was corny but fun corny. I'm kind of having a bad night, but I like my outfit today, so I want to do an outfit of the day. I am 84% through my ebook for Give Me a Sign. This book for a while felt like it didn't really have a plot. I mean, obviously stuff was happening, but I wasn't really excited to pick this book up. And I know I said earlier at the beginning of this vlog that this book was educational without being preachy, but I think I'm gonna go back on that because this book started to feel like it was just a pathway between learning moments for her. She has so many interactions with different characters where someone will say or do something, then in her head she's like, this is bad and this makes me feel this way, and deaf people do this and this is bad for deaf people, which I'm happy to learn. Absolutely, we need to try and get rid of some of the ableism around being hard of hearing. But like I said, it just felt like this book was a map where we just went from point to point talking about those different things that she doesn't like hearing about herself. You can tell it's the author talking to the reader and not like the character, and it's just a very overt explanation of why certain things are wrong or bad. If it was a book where I was already well familiar with these ideas, I'm sure I would be a lot more annoyed, but again, this is pretty new material to me, so I am learning a lot. But we have now had some drama added to the story. So according to my Kindle calculations, I have 40 minutes left in the book. Here's everyone's favorite boy. Are you stinky? Yeah. Oh, people were asking for updates about him in my last vlog because he had his boo-boo I'm not sure if I even updated, but he is 100% recovered. He said, it's okay, I just got glass in my leg so mommy would bring me my food and kiss me. The vet said he was so good. He got like lidocaine and stuff in his leg and he didn't even need to be sedated because he's so sweet. Well, I'm kind of upset that I just took my makeup off before recording this, but the reason I got up to take my makeup off is because I was falling asleep in the last 10% of this. Not even 10%, 10 minutes. I was like 95% of the way through. Done. Finished it. Not much else to say since I last updated. It was pretty boring in the end. Even up until like the last couple pages, there were some still really corny lines. A lot of the author explaining things about deaf culture, which is fine and good, but it just surpassed a level that felt authentic in the story. And it was like, this author should have just written a nonfiction book. I still think I'm gonna give it like 3 stars, even though I know I probably sounded super critical, but it was fun. Like, I learned stuff. Lila was a cool main character. She had a lot of growth. The romance was very typical, but like, it was fine. So just hit the middle of the road for me. This is the last book I have out from the library, so I'm gonna give this one a shot next. As I've teed up, I'm so excited for this. Oh my god, this came out this year. Look at me reading new releases. Am I reading this book at the perfect time of year, or am I reading this book at the perfect time of year? Also, Gordo has been faithfully here the entire time. It's a Sunday morning. Gordo's on my lap purring after having breakfast. It's like 10 a.m. I woke up pretty early, and I'm 52% through my book. I don't think I've really updated about it, so I'll do like an updated synopsis. Mainly clarifying that this book does not count as a summer camp book, so me including this is kind of a stretch. But this main character's name is Celine, and she lives in a family where it's her mom, and her older sister, and her dad left when she was like 10 because his mistress that he'd been seeing had twins. So now she has like abandonment issues, and she's very intense and is not friendly to anyone except like 2 people. She runs a TikTok for conspiracy theories, and she's the top student in her class, so all she wants to do is succeed after school. So she signs up for this program put on by this famous lawyer, I believe, and it's like a survival in the woods course throughout the school year, and whoever comes out on top of that will get like a full scholarship, and she's trying to get into Cambridge. So she signs up for it. This guy that she used to be really close with, like his mom and her mom have been best friends since they were kids, he also signs up for it, and that forces them to realize like why they fell apart earlier and apologize and whatever. Right now it's pretty light on the camp part of it because they'll go do it for a couple of days, then go back to school, then they'll go do some more, then go back to school. So I just think this setup is kind of weird, and I don't understand. Like, maybe in England they do this kind of thing because this book is set in England, but I'm really just confused on why it's done the way it is. And the other thing being, I really like Talia Hibbert's other books, but you can tell she's taken her writing and stooped it a little bit lower to be like in with the kids. So there's a couple parts that are really corny. I still think it's funny. According to my Kindle, I only have 2 hours left in the book and it goes by really fast. So I'm gonna try and finish this. That's my update. Right now we're going toward 3 stars, but we'll see. Gordo, are you happy? Okay, it's 12:04. As promised, I left my phone in a different room and completely finished my book. Also, I forgot to mention, it was due back at the library, so I requested it on Kindle. I mean, it's really difficult to review this because almost none of it was like outdoorsy. There were like 2 scenes where they were actually in nature. So this book is not what I was expecting. It's more of like a high school book than summer. I did really like that the main character had problems with like abandonment with her dad, but then it made it so that it was like predictably, like they clearly like each other, but she's like, let's break up because she's afraid of being left, which I think is probably relatable, but I've 1, read too many books like it, and 2, get irritated by 3rd act breakups and miscommunication and back and forth like that. Still, the characters really kept it afloat because they were all funny and had really vivid personalities, even the side characters. Talia continues to shine there. And obviously I read it in like 2 sittings, so it went by fast. I think I'm gonna give it like 3.5 stars. It was cute. I somehow forgot to mention, but I also really liked that the main male lead had OCD, and so he was battling with that the entire time, and he was in therapy for it and discussed it a lot, actually. I think he was a great pairing with the female main character, so I really liked their relationship. I don't know why I never discussed this, but huge props to that representation. And also it was really sweet because in the afterword she was like, I wish that I handled my OCD the way that this character handles his. So she, like, her own character was her inspiration. It was so sweet. So loved that. Which means the only book I have left is good old Look No Further. What? Oh, you want me to read it to you? Okay. Hi, how are you? It's been like a week for me. Obviously not for you, it's been 2 seconds. But this weekend, I basically only read on the weekends now, if we're being honest. So the fact that I'm doing all these reading challenges where I read a bunch of books, no, doesn't work. Anyway, this weekend I finished Look No Further. Mainly just compliments of how the book is set up. Like, obviously one of the siblings is white passing and one of them is very Chinese looking, so it talks a lot about the differences in how they're treated. I think this does some of the most overt discussions about microaggressions, because I feel like a lot of books for teens that are about either racism or some kind of mistreatment of people who are minorities, it gets very preachy, and it'll be like, this is wrong and I hate when someone does this to me and this is bad. So it just feels like it panders to people, and this book just writes the interaction and then you get the character's emotional response from it, which I think is so much more natural than being like, they said this to me and that was bad. Like, obviously not trying to gatekeep how authors talk about microaggressions, because who am I to have experienced one, but I don't know, I feel like this really put me in an empathetic place with understanding how that makes the characters feel, and even when it's something that you'd be like, oh, that was unintentional. I just thought it unpacked it really well. This book is less campy and more of like, obviously it's set in New York City and Manhattan, so they're mostly inside at this institute. It's not like they're out camping. There was a little excursion they had where they were out in the woods, which was nice. I just liked the writing of it. It was very teenager-like without being cringy. But I will say, reading the last like half of this in one sitting, I found myself looking at the page numbers very frequently. Like, it wasn't gripping. I was able to read it just fine, but I was never urgently getting back to it, and it kind of slowed down toward the middle and the end. That was something I was battling, even though it wasn't that strenuous of a battle. And the only other complaint that I have is that whenever, obviously this is like a Parent Trap themed book where they find out they have the same dad, but they both like never really knew the dad, so they're on this mission to find him. And two things. One, when they first find out that they're siblings, it happens so fast and they're just like, well, guess I have a brother now. Like, it went so quickly and they just accepted it with almost, you know, no intense emotional reaction, which feels like it would be a very significant thing to uncover. So that was a little bit strange. And then the resolution of them tracking down their dad, I also just think went by really fast and was, I don't want to say not that satisfying, but not what I expected, I guess. So that being said, I think I'm gonna end up giving it like 3.75 stars, like rounded up to 4. I really enjoyed it. Again, I like what it adds to the conversation about being a biracial kid. I think if you're biracial or if you want to read more about it, this is the best book I've read that explains that experience. Obviously very tailored toward these two characters, but it shows not just what it's like to be someone who's biracial, but two perspectives on it, because you have this person who looks more Asian than his sister, but grew up in a white community, has a white family, so he doesn't know Mandarin and doesn't feel connected to his culture, which I have heard from a lot of biracial people that like that's something they go through. But then on the flip side, there's the other sibling who looks white but has grown up in a Chinese community, speaks Mandarin, doesn't look the part, but definitely is more connected to the culture. So I think it reaches out a hand to both sides, and whether you're white or biracial or any race or ethnicity, this was such an educational read for me, and I can see how this would be quite a comforting read for people who are able to relate to it. So with that being done, that's the end of this vlog. It is now well into September, almost October, so we're done with summer camp. It is officially no longer summer. I don't think I read enough books that were like truly set at summer camps to decide if this is one of my new favorite tropes, so throw some more recommendations my way. Preferably adult romances, but I'll take what I can get. Thank you everyone for watching. Hope to see you next time. Bye.